My name is Evan Watts, 41 years old. I live alone in a modest two-bedroom house at the end of a cul-de-sac in Wilmer, Ohio. I'm the neighbor nobody notices, the quiet one who waters his plants on schedule, waves politely but never makes conversation. And that's the way I like it. I work remotely as a software tester. It's monotonous, but it pays well and lets me disappear into a world where I don't have to answer to anyone. After what happened with Allison, my ex, I promised myself no more drama, no more emotional debt, just quiet. The house to my left has been vacant for almost a year. The one to my right belongs to the Palmers, a couple in their late 30s, no kids, friendly but distant. Occasionally I hear them arguing through the walls, but nothing unusual until Friday night. It was close to midnight. I was in the kitchen making tea. The window above the sink cracked open to let in the cool spring air. That's when I heard it. We wait until Friday, the trailhead's remote. No cameras. Once it's done, we just drive back and pretend nothing happened. A man's voice, calm, calculated. "Are you sure?" a woman asked. Nervous. "Because if anyone finds out, they won't, trust me." I froze. The voice was coming from the Palmer's yard, or just over the fence. I crept to the side window, turned off the light, and leaned close. Two shadows stood near the back corner, barely illuminated by the motion light from the neighbor's porch. I couldn't see faces, just body shapes. One tall, one shorter, both wrapped in jackets despite the mild weather. They weren't smoking. They weren't talking about work. They were planning something violent. I backed away, heart hammering. Had I misheard? Maybe it was a scene from a movie they had on loud? But as I closed the window, I caught one last line. "And remember, no phones, burner only. We can't leave anything behind this time." I barely slept that night. By morning, I had convinced myself I was being dramatic. Misunderstood something, took it out of context. People joke about murder all the time. Podcasts, Netflix. You name it. But a knot in my stomach refused to loosen. So I started watching. From my kitchen window, my upstairs bedroom, my backyard. Nothing suspicious, just normal suburban life. Until Tuesday, around 11:30 a.m., while I was on a video call for work, I glanced out the front window and saw three men unloading boxes from the back of a black SUV in the Palmer's driveway. One of them wasn't someone I recognized. He was bald, muscular, mid-50s, and moved like a man who'd done time. Cautious, always scanning. They carried the boxes around to the backyard. 10 minutes later, the SUV was gone. I walked outside, pretending to check the mail. Through a gap in the fence, I saw a black duffel bag on the patio, and what looked like a map or blueprint laid out on a foldable table. I felt my throat tighten. This wasn't a podcast. This wasn't paranoia. This was real. And it was happening 20 feet from my kitchen window. I didn't call the police. Not yet. I told myself I needed more than I overheard something and saw a map. I needed proof. So that night, I drove to Best Buy and bought two outdoor security cameras. One for the tree overlooking the Palmer's backyard and another disguised as a light bulb near the shared fence. By 2 a.m., both were set up, motion triggered, streaming directly to my laptop. I stared at the blinking status light like it was a lifeline. The next day passed in a blur. Every notification on my phone made me jump. Every creak of the house pulled my gaze toward the window. And then, around 8:47 p.m., the camera caught them again. Three figures in the backyard. One was definitely Mr. Palmer. The second could have been his wife. The third, the bald man from the SUV. They leaned over the table, pointing at a printed satellite image of what looked like a forest trail. One of them had a red Sharpie, circling something. Then I saw it. The name written at the top of the map. J. Collins Trail Entry, April Chugaforsta. I blinked. Collins? As in Jennifer Collins? My co-worker. The one who lived 3 blocks over. The one I occasionally walked with after work when our calls ran long. I replayed the footage, the red circle, the note, the word entry period. They were planning something for her. I closed my laptop slowly. My hands were shaking. The date was Thursday, April the 20th. Whatever they were planning, whatever they were going to do, was tomorrow. I couldn't breathe. I just stared at the screen, at the paused frame showing the red circle around Jay Collins. Trail entry. April the 21st, the date clearly written in block letters like it was a task on a checklist. Not a person, not a life, just a location and a name. I had barely known Jennifer 6 months ago. She was assigned to my QA team after her promotion. But she was kind, smart. Always sent messages like, "Hope today treats you gently." We'd walk sometimes in the neighborhood after long meetings, just to decompress. I sat on my bed, pulse pounding in my throat, and ran through every scenario. Maybe it was a hiking trip. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe I was spiraling. But then I thought of the voices I'd heard on Friday. The phrases, no cameras, remote trailhead, burner phone, just drive back like nothing happened. And now this. This wasn't a coincidence. I had to do something. I pulled up the camera footage again and took screenshots. Several high-res frames of the map, the bag, the people. It wasn't crystal clear, but enough detail existed. The map layout, a few visible labels, their silhouettes, the timestamp. Then I did something I hadn't done in over a year. I called Jennifer. She answered on the second ring, her voice light and unaware. "Hey, Evan, everything okay?" I couldn't tell her the truth, not directly, not yet. "Hey, just wanted to ask if you're going hiking tomorrow." There was a pause. "Actually, yeah, just a solo trail in Hillside Park." "Why?" I swallowed. "Is someone meeting you there?" No, I wasn't planning to tell anyone. Just go early and beat the weekend rush. Wait, why are you asking?" I forced a chuckle. "I was just in that area the other day and saw a big sign about flooding. Didn't want you caught off guard." She paused again, slower this time. "Oh, thanks. Maybe I'll postpone." My shoulders sagged. I hadn't convinced her, but I'd bought time. "I'll text you," she added. "I might just hit the gym instead." "Sounds safer," I said, and hung up. That night, I barely moved from my chair. I kept watch on the cameras. One figure emerged around 11 p.m., dragging what looked like a shovel from the back shed. Another carried something in a duffel bag, maybe rope or tools. They weren't hiding anymore. They thought no one was watching. I downloaded everything, made backup copies, put one USB in a bag of rice on the kitchen counter in case they found the originals. Around 1:30 a.m., I heard a knock on my door. My heart jumped so hard I thought it would burst through my ribs. I turned off the lights, stayed still, peered through the peephole. Nobody there. Then I stepped back and saw it. A single black glove had been laid on my doormat. I didn't sleep. By 6 a.m., I had a plan. Print everything, drive to the police station, tell them everything, even if it made me sound like a conspiracy nut. But as I approached my car, I stopped cold. The front windshield was shattered. A single note was duct taped to the steering wheel. "Some things aren't your business." I looked around, but the street was empty. Morning fog clung to the trees like ghosts. I grabbed the note with a gloved hand, stuffed it in a plastic bag, and went back inside. I called the police non-emergency line. The dispatcher sounded bored until I mentioned surveillance footage and a potential premeditated attack. Then she perked up. A cruiser arrived 20 minutes later. Two officers, Patrolman Sykes and Officer Lang, stood in my kitchen as I showed them the videos. Sykes crossed his arms. "This is serious." Lang leaned in. "And you think the woman on the map is a real person?" "Yes," I said. "She works with me. I called her. She said she was hiking alone today." Lang pulled out his radio. "We'll send a car to her address and another out to the trailhead." I nodded. I want to file a report too. My car was vandalized. I received a threat. Sykes scratched his beard. You got cameras on your own property? I pointed. Motion cameras. 2 of them. You mind if we pull the SD cards? Already backed up, I said, handing over a drive. He looked impressed. Not bad for a quiet neighbor. By 10:15 a.m., Lang got a call. He stepped outside to take it, then came back in looking pale. They found her, he said. My stomach dropped. Is she okay? Yeah, still in her driveway. Said she saw the patrol car and decided not to go. She was packing her bag, had her boots on and everything. Sykes exhaled hard. That's too close. Lang added, and get this. Someone reported a suspicious vehicle parked at the back trailhead. When officers arrived, they found it abandoned. Inside was a burner phone and a black duffel bag. Half empty. I felt ice in my veins. Were the Palmers arrested? Lang shook his head. We're tracking the vehicle registration now, but without clearer footage or a direct connection, we've got probable cause, not proof. They left a threatening note on my car, I said. And that helps, Sykes said. But if they lawyer up, we'll need more. They left, promising a follow-up. I stood in my doorway, the glove still lying next to the shattered glass like a calling card. They knew I knew, and they weren't finished. I'd saved Jennifer, but now I was next. The silence after the police left was heavier than the threat itself. Every creak of my floorboard felt amplified. I pulled every blind, locked every door, checked the windows twice. I even turned off the Wi-Fi. Something about the air felt electric, like I'd stepped into a current I couldn't get out of. They knew. They knew I had listened, recorded, interfered. And now I wasn't just the quiet neighbor anymore. I was a problem. Around 3 p.m., a knock came at the door. I flinched so hard I nearly spilled the cup of coffee I'd been gripping for hours. I peered through the peephole cautiously. No one. Then I saw it. A new glove. This time with a blood-red smear across the palm. Not actual blood, I hoped, but paint? Ink? It didn't matter, it was a message. Deliberate, marked. I snapped a photo and texted it to Officer Lang. Another glove. Red mark, doorstep. 30 minutes ago it was clear. I'm not safe. He didn't respond right away. I sat back down, sweat pooling in the crook of my neck, and stared at the camera feeds. No motion. Nothing on the front lawn, nothing out back. But then, a flicker. The fence line camera briefly glitched. A static spike. 1 second gone. When the feed resumed, I nearly jumped out of my seat. The back gate was slightly ajar. I grabbed the baseball bat from under my bed, cheap aluminum, dented from years of neglect, and headed down the hallway like I was in a horror movie I didn't want to star in. I unlocked the sliding glass door and stepped outside. Nothing. I approached the fence, heart pounding in my ears, and there, pinned to the inside of the gate with a thumbtack. You don't know the whole story. And underneath it, scribbled in black Sharpie, meet me at the construction site tonight. Midnight, come alone. No name, no signature. Just coordinates scrawled underneath. An old gravel lot where a new strip mall had stalled out mid-project. I stared at it. Every rational thought screamed, don't go. Call the police. Forward the message. But then again, what if this wasn't from the Palmers? What if someone on the inside wanted out? What if there was a crack in their plan, and I could wedge it open? That night, I sat in my car in the gravel lot. Headlights off, engine idling. It was 11:52 p.m. The place was deserted, just skeletal steel beams and old pallets lit by the occasional flicker of a busted floodlight. I had my phone recording audio. I had the camera lens poking out just enough to see the path ahead. Then, movement. A figure walked out from behind one of the unfinished pillars. It was Mrs. Palmer. She looked around nervously, then walked toward my car. I stepped out, keeping the door between us. I don't have much time, she said, eyes darting. You wrote the note? She nodded. Yes, I had to. He's going too far. I didn't sign up for. She cut herself off. He? I asked. My husband, she said bitterly. Landon? Was he going to kill Jennifer? Mrs. Palmer looked away. He was going to scare her. That's what he told me. Ruin her reputation. Leak photos. But then I found the map, and I realized he meant something else. She handed me a burner phone. Everything's on here. Voice memos, pictures. I recorded him. I hid it in the garage and left it charging. He doesn't know it's missing yet. Why are you giving this to me? Because I don't want blood on my hands. I didn't stop him last time. Last time? Her face crumpled. There was another girl last year. Her name was Celeste. She vanished. Everyone thinks she ran away. But I saw Landon come home that night. Covered in scratches. I stood frozen. Why didn't you go to the police? I asked. She looked down. Because I was pregnant and scared, and by the time I wasn't anymore, Celeste was just a memory. I took the phone from her. You're doing the right thing. She turned to leave. You need to hurry. He's planning something bigger now. You exposed him. He won't stop with threats. I spent the next 2 hours listening to the phone's contents. There were at least 4 voice memos. In one, Landon calmly discussed tracking Jennifer's schedule. In another, he spoke about leverage and removing loose ends. And then, the final one. He said my name. Evan's getting too close. If he doesn't back off, we'll deal with him the same way. I forwarded the files to Officer Lang. 10 minutes later, he called. Stay inside. Lock everything. I'm pulling in detectives. This is going to blow wide open. But Lang wasn't the one who arrived first. At 4:13 a.m., I heard a crash downstairs. Glass shattering. I reached for my phone, heart slamming against my ribs. I called 911. Someone's in my house, I whispered. A voice called from the bottom of the stairs. Low, taunting. You should have kept your mouth shut, neighbor. I didn't recognize it. Not Landon. Someone else. Maybe the bald man from the trail map? The one who never showed his face on camera. I climbed into the crawl space behind the guest room closet, an old storm shelter from decades past, and pulled the panel shut behind me. I heard footsteps upstairs, furniture moving, drawers opening, and then silence. 5 minutes. 10. I don't know how long. Then the sirens. The police found the man trying to climb the back fence. A crowbar in his hand. Latex gloves in his pocket. He refused to speak, but they had enough now. The burner phone, the break-in, the gloves, the maps, the duffel bag. And soon, with a warrant, they'd have everything else. The web was unraveling, and I was finally coming out of the quiet. I was escorted to the station before sunrise. Not as a suspect, but for my own protection. Detective Marla Eaton met me in a dimly lit interview room. She was sharp, mid-40s, with a silver streak in her hair, and a calm, steel-trap presence that made me feel like finally someone was in control. We've arrested the man who broke into your home, she said. Name's Joel Harner, ex-military, dishonorably discharged. Linked to 2 other suspicious disappearances in neighboring states. Cases that went cold. Is he talking? I asked. Not yet, but the evidence speaks loud enough. Your recordings, especially the ones on the burner phone, are damning. Not just for Harner, but for Landon Palmer. I felt a knot loosen in my chest. We're issuing a warrant for Landon's arrest within the hour, she continued. And we're dispatching protection to Jennifer Collins' home as a precaution. What about his wife? I asked. Mrs. Palmer is being placed into protective custody. She's cooperating and providing even more documentation. Emails, texts, receipts for cash withdrawals tied to Harner. She's afraid, but she's done running. I nodded. Good. Mr. Watts, she added, softer, what you did may have saved multiple lives. I didn't want to be involved, I said quietly. I just heard something I couldn't unhear. She smiled. And then you did something most people wouldn't. You stood up. News broke by noon. Landon Palmer was arrested at a gas station 20 miles out of town. He had a bag packed, fake ID, cash, a pistol tucked under the spare tire in his trunk. The local press dubbed it the Trailhead Murder Plot. A neighbor overhearing whispers. A hidden surveillance system. A woman nearly lured to her death. It all felt surreal to me, like I was watching a movie and somehow forgot I was in it. Jennifer called that evening. They said you saved my life, she said softly. How do I even respond to that? You don't need to, I told her. Just keep living it. We talked for an hour, about nothing and everything. She promised to bring me soup next week. I promised not to install any more spy cameras unless necessary. We both laughed, though we knew the trauma underneath hadn't fully settled. The fallout came fast. The Palmer's house was raided. Detectives recovered digital files, burner phones, more maps. Names of women, timetables. Details that confirmed this wasn't a one-off. This was a pattern. Harner was the enforcer. Landon was the planner. And apparently Celeste, the girl from last year, was the beginning of something far darker. Her body hadn't been found yet. But thanks to Mrs. Palmer's confession and Landon's upcoming trial, authorities were narrowing search efforts. The next 2 weeks passed in strange silence. Not the peaceful kind I once craved, but a cautious quiet, filled with door locks and background checks and jumpy nerves every time a shadow passed too close. But I wasn't hiding anymore. I spoke at a town hall meeting. I gave the statement for the local paper. I sat across from reporters and detectives and told them everything. Not for attention, but because people needed to know what hiding could cost. Because someone always notices something, and too often we look away. 3 months later, a plaque was installed at the entrance to Hillside Park. It read, "In honor of those who spoke up, because silence is not always safety." I stood before it with Jennifer one cool morning. She brought hot cocoa and a ridiculous donut with rainbow sprinkles. "Still think of yourself as the quiet neighbor?" she asked. I shrugged. Maybe not quiet, just careful with my words. She smiled. Well, I'm glad you made noise this time. That night, I returned home and stood in the backyard where it all began. The fence was still there. The same knotty old wood with peeling paint. But it didn't feel like a wall anymore. It felt like a boundary I'd once hid behind, and had now stepped beyond. The wind shifted, a leaf skittered across the grass, and I whispered to no one in particular, I'm not the quiet one anymore. Epilogue. Landon Palmer pled guilty to conspiracy to commit murder and was sentenced to 35 years without parole. Joel Harner received 50 years for his role in multiple counts of attempted homicide and suspected involvement in prior disappearances. Mrs. Palmer entered witness protection and testified as part of the state's case. Jennifer and I, we still walk sometimes. We still talk. She still says things like, "Hope today treats you gently." And I hope she means that for both of us, because the truth is, I never wanted to be a hero, but in a world where so many stay silent, I just refuse to be one more whisper.